What's going on, Ambitious Vet? Welcome to episode number 76 of the Ambitious Vet Show with 8th generation Marine Corps veteran and CEO of Mobius Media Solutions, Patch Baker. Welcome to the Ambitious Vet Podcast, where we believe that if you desire more than you have in any area of life, you have to become more in the process. My name is Chris Hoffman, Marine Corps combat veteran turned social entrepreneur, family man, and personal and professional development leader. On this show, I dive into the trenches with big thinking and conscious veterans who know what it takes not only to pay the bills after the military, but really live with a sense of purpose, satisfaction, and career fulfillment we all desire most after financial stability is no longer a challenge to overcome. Ambitious Vet, if you haven't already, grab your pen and paper. It's time to gain the golden grenades needed to break through your fear barriers and live a life of purpose with passion. Have you realized that having financial stability after your service is not actually as hard as you thought it'd be? I mean, let's face it, resume writing, interview prep, translation of skills only get you as far as the first few years after your military service. After about 3 years and a couple careers later, you begin to feel unsatisfied, undervalued, and you probably have this I'm misunderstood feeling inside and out. You know why I know that? Because I've been there, done that, and have discovered thousands of other ambitious vets out there that feel the exact same way. So, are you ready to have your voice be heard and join other veterans who have participated globally inside of our qualitative research study with the goal to uncover what your needs, wants, and desires are after financial stability isn't a challenge to overcome anymore? If so, I encourage you to click the link in the show notes right now, take a quick survey, and be entered inside of a raffle for a $100 Amazon gift card. Not to mention, you'll receive a free copy of my Amazon best-selling ebook, 10 Steps to Predicted Success Out of the Uniform. The first winner will be announced the week of February 28th via episode 77 and via email. Simply click the link for the survey below to share your voice now. Here we are, Ambitious Vet, back into the Ambitious Vet Laboratory, where we are interviewing some of the top thought leaders in the world right now that are providing you the golden grenades needed to accelerate your gaps in career fulfillment, a sense of purpose, or wherever you're trying to improve right now in your life. Today, we're going to have Patch Baker on the show. He's an 8th generation crane-eating Marine that served for 14 years and now is the CEO and founder of Mobius Media Solutions. He's been out for over a decade in his civilian life now. Patch has also built and sold multiple businesses, helped create several millionaires, and managed marketing campaigns ranging from $10,000 to $1 million invested per month. Now, he's also spoken on stages alongside entrepreneurs like Gary Vaynerchuk, Roland Frazier, and Kevin Arrington. And here's the thing, Ambitious Vet. I want you to be listening for a few golden grenades that I wrote down and I'm already starting to implement in my life, career, and business right now. One is the misunderstanding that us as veterans with an extreme, intense, mission-driven mentality and our willingness to do complete work and how that is actually misunderstood inside the marketplace depending on the arenas you're in, and how he unpackaged himself to not fit the environment but actually have the environment fit around him. Now also, the problem with getting out with good intentions, right? But also lacking the training and development to succeed at the highest levels that we all desire inside this community of ambitious vets, right? And also the power of seeking knowledge, leveraging the tools that we've already gained inside the uniform, and how Patch has actually done that. Without further ado, ambitious vets, don't take it from my voice. Listen for your own golden grenades. Let's go ahead and dive into the trenches with Patch Baker. What's going on, Ambitious Vet? Here we are back into the trenches with CEO of Mobius Media Solutions and 8th generation United States Marine, Patch Baker. How are you, Patch?
What's up, buddy? Glad to be here.
Oh, man, it's so good to have you. I mean, 8th generation Marine, man, you had really no choice but to, be an Uncle Sam misguided child, huh?
Zero choice, bro. I was making military racks at like 4.
That's funny. 45-degree angles, right?
100% all the time, the whole quarter, everything.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, brother, welcome to the show. Tell us who you are in your own words and what you're passionate about in life right now.
Yeah, man. So obviously, I run a digital marketing company. I've got a bunch of other companies that I've started along the way, and either acquired or bought into or started myself. And I love building businesses. I really love scaling companies. That's just something that I'm super good at, and I've had a lot of help along the way. I've met a lot of really great people that gave me a lot of knowledge, as fast as I could suck it up. And it's super fun for me. I really enjoy helping the veteran community and working with other veterans. We work with tons of other veteran companies, and I've just always been able to relate to those kinds of people. And I can have open conversations with them, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, and I don't have to worry about tiptoeing around or sugarcoating anything. I could just give it to them straight, which is always a really good relationship to have with the client. And then it's more of like a partnership type relationship than it is a vendor client relationship where I just feel like that's so fake.
Mm.
And a lot of companies these days that are trying to scale, they just fake it. Like they sugarcoat everything, especially in the services industry, man. It's just something I just can't get down with. So I really launched working with other veteran companies because it was so easy for me. My experience in the civilian world just wasn't great coming out of the military.
Mm.
So since then, man, I've been able to really do some cool stuff. I've been part of a lot of really cool organizations. I've got to have 5 exits, and just trying to build and scale and keep doing everything that I'm doing well, and everything that I suck at, try to stop doing it.
That's awesome. And it just sounds like, down to the grain. I mean, it just, you got out of the uniform and, you had some landmines that you hit, definitely some problems and stuff like that. But it also sounds like you learned from them, which is always good. And sometimes us, military veterans that, maybe listen to this show, sometimes we don't always learn. Sometimes we learn the hard way, right? I got out of the uniform and I failed in the first 5 careers in 3 different industries and failed in 2 businesses. So it took me kind of hitting my head against the wall a few times before I started learning. So you don't always have to have it all figured out, ambitious vet, whenever you get out of the uniform. Just know that sometimes it is the trial and error that builds thick skin. So Pash, I mean, you're talking a little bit about the first few years out of the uniform. I mean, just from doing the research, building up into this interview, and just, from what I've heard in our pre interview and all that good stuff, man, you had a wild ride in the first few years, getting fired from your first 2 careers out of the uniform. Tell us in your own words, what was your experience like getting out of the uniform in the first few years? Because you were a 14-year Marine before you got out, correct?
Yeah, and when I got out, it wasn't like it. Well, I didn't go. I went into the civilian community, but I went in doing the same thing. I went to be a government contractor, overseas. So it was the same people, right? It was a civilian job, but same people,
Right,
same basic skills and same basic task. But when I left that's when all hell broke loose
right.
because um, first off, I came back and I couldn't use any of my past resume for anything that really related to anything that I could do in the civilian world. And although, it sounds really good to be able to put on your resume that you had X amount of people in your command and you had X amount of, military dollars at your disposal and all the shit that people write. But the truth of the matter was, I couldn't really find anything as quickly as I wanted to.
Mm.
That doesn't mean that I would have never found anything, but you come back and you've got a lot of skills, you chin held high, you got a lot of years under your belt. You probably got some medals, you're feeling good about yourself, and you should be able to walk into any company anytime and get that sweetheart job. And it just wasn't like that. So what happened for me was I had a retired sergeant major who had gotten out and he got a job at a manufacturing facility, and we were welding these metal panels. He basically called me. He said, "Look, man, I'll get you a management spot, but you got to come in and work on the floor for a minute. And you know how to weld?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. I grew up on a farm. Welding was something I did when I was a kid." And um, so I went into the shop, and I liked it, man. It felt like something that I could do really easily. It didn't take a lot of brain power. It paid pretty well. Welders get paid pretty well, and I was going to be the manager pretty soon, I thought. And so I went in there, and I was, I worked for the sergeant major when we were on active duty. So like I knew what this guy expected.
Right.
And so I went in there, and I was welding for everything I was worth, man. I was throwing out like 20 pounds an hour. And all the other welders, they were all like, I say this with love in my heart, but they were all like biker dudes. They were all like rednecks. Every single one of them smoked. They had the whole, backward hat on with the bandana. These are professional welder guys, but they were putting out like 10 panels an hour. And so one of them came up to me one day. He's like 50, and I guess he was one of the older guys there, but he's like maybe 50, but like you could tell all 50 of those years were hard earned years. Like this dude was serious. So he came up and he's like, "Hey, look, man, you get paid the same whether you make 10 panels an hour or 20 panels an hour. What we're going to make is we're going to make 10 panels an hour. You understand?" I said, "No, I don't understand." And he said, "Well, let me say it to you another way. If you don't start making 10 panels an hour, we're going to have a problem." And I said, "Well, how big a boy are you?" And so I basically had a confrontation with him. And I basically said, "Hey, look, man, you need to carry yourself on over across to your own welding station." I didn't say it that nicely, but for the podcast purposes, that's what I said. So then I had to go to this place called HR, which I had no idea what an HR place was. But when you get there, there's people that in my point of view, didn't have a clue what went on in the real world. But it began to inform me that in the real world, you can't bully people. And I said, "Bully? I wasn't bullying him. He told me I need to work slower." He's like, "Well, I don't care what they said. You can't threaten people." And I said, "Well, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life." And that's exactly what you say, by the way, if you ever want to get fired, because that's exactly what happened next. So I left that job, and I went to work for another company that was doing winterization, like rolling shutters that go down the outside of your windows.
Mm-hmm.
And I got there. I'd been there for like a week or so, and they loved me. I was working really hard, and I was doing everything they told me to do. And they gave me a list one morning. The manager was going out of town, and he gave me a list of stuff to do. And then he left, and I worked as diligently as I could, as fast as I could. I ended up leaving like 6 o'clock. Next day I came in, and they called me again to this HR place and called me in for stealing. I said, "I didn't steal anything from you. Nothing here I want." And they said, No. You're supposed to leave at 4 o'clock. You didn't leave to 6:30. And I said, "Look, you gave me a list of things to do. I worked until they were done."
Mm.
And they were like, No. You leave at 4 o'clock. I was like, "Okay, so let me get this straight. Where I'm from, we work until the job's done. And you're saying that you gave me a list of things to do, and you want me to leave before I finish the list? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life." And again, apparently that's what you say when you want to get fired, because that's exactly what happened. So I really did fail. Like I fell on my face doing what I thought was exactly what the employer wanted. And in one case it was outperforming, and in another case it was, living your life by a clock on the wall instead of, going until the job gets done, which is what was, buried in my soul since I was a kid. I mean, like I already told you, I grew up on a farm. I joined military academy when I was 13. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17. Like more than half of my life, I've been working until the job was done. I mean, First Sergeant gives you a list of shit to do. You're going to keep going until that list is done.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't care what the clock on the wall says, right? And it was a really, really hard thing for me to figure out, because I had failed in 2 places where I was actually excelling. Like my actual work product was excelling, but it
Mm.
still fell short of what the expectation was. And they put me in a spot where I felt like my only defense was offense, right? Because isn't that the military way, right? Like
Yeah.
if you get if you get attacked in any method, form, fashion, the very next thing you do in life is, start attacking back, right? Like your defense for a second, get your bearings, then you attack back, locate, close with, and destroy the enemy by use of fire maneuver. I mean, that's what we all were taught.
Come on. Hoorah.
But but that doesn't work in the civilian world.
Yeah.
Like it just like you'll hit the wall.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely can identify with that, man, because we're so mission driven. I remember the first uniform I walked in when walked out of the Marine Corps uniform as a corporal in 2012. I walked right into a large commercial gym uniform that has over 250 or more locations nationwide right now, and I was not good at sales. I thought sales was going to help develop the human capital gaps that I had as far as in communication. And I quickly became a very, top performer inside this gym. And I got fired at the 12-month mark because, and their excuse was, I have no like social skills. And they're just like, you're just so mission driven. You come in and work, you don't socialize. Yes, your numbers are high, but that's not the only thing that matters here. And later I found out that large commercial gym got a big tax write off for firing me at the end of that 12-month period. And I thought to myself, maybe that's why they hired me in the first place. However, I learned a lot about that landmine, that first problem, versus diving into a dark sense of depression, that some veterans may fall into whenever they start failing out of the uniform because we don't have our brothers and sisters to lean on. So, what did you learn from those experiences, man? When you were like outperforming in the welder industry, because that's a high paying industry if you can really get good in there. And then also with the other career, like what did you learn out of like being a high performer and like not really fitting in with the culture? What would be some takeaways?
Yeah, so I mean, what I learned about myself was I needed to build my own team, do my own thing, and I became an entrepreneur
Yeah.
because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to break the thing that makes me who I am, right? And you know, it wasn't like I was kind of like a college kid and then I, you know, went to boot camp after college and all that. I didn't have any experience as a civilian without structure.
Mm,
Even when I was, 13 years old, 13 to 14 to 15, like that is a very structured learning period in an adolescent's life.
yeah.
Like if you don't get to them by the time they're 14 or 15 or 16, like you really got a problem on your hands for a young adult.
Mm,
Once they hit over that 18 mark, if you haven't gotten them into some kind of structure or understanding authority or something like that, like they're going to have a really rough time until they hit like 25 and start calming down again.
mm,
Right. But that's
yep.
a very, that point in your life, you're literally setting the foundation for everything else that you will learn and do and excel or not excel in life. And for me, I was like, dude, I'm telling you, I was in military academy. I was on the drill team. Like I was playing sports. I was doing equestrian honor guard. I was doing a ton of things that were so structured. Like everything is
Mm,
exactly like this.
mm,
Like don't step outside of that box because you won't be like the rest and therefore you won't fit into the
mm,
standard in order for you to excel,
right.
right?
Right.
So for me, like I couldn't like I just came to grips with the fact that I wasn't going to be able to undo who I was to fit their need.
Mm,
So
yeah.
my first thought was, I'm going to have to build something that I can live with and be proud of and still play within my rules,
Mm,
But what I'll do is I'll play with other people that know this game, right? Which is why I started with veterans. Like that was my first client roster. And it did really, really well because they all understood me and I understood them, and I didn't need to break. And I knew that everything that I've ever done in my life that was worth doing, I did as a team. So
Mm-hmm.
like I don't even call the government calls the people that work for me employees, but I call them teammates.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been like that because I've run a lot of miles. I've swam a lot of laps. I've climbed a lot of walls. I've I've walked a long distance way after, or you know, I wanted to quit by myself. But quite honestly, I didn't want to be the one that quit, right? Because you got so many other people around you. And then, you go to a combat zone, and that same thing carries across. In the military, we take for granted how many things that we do even from the first day in boot camp that have a significant reason to do it later
Mm-hmm.
in a war zone,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the way that they made you, like, you remember back the first like 2 days you were in boot camp, they taught you how to wash your hands, right? Like the simple little things that they did
Yeah.
to just give you this a different perspective on life. And because you had to do it that way, you had to
Mm-hmm.
do everything their exact way, then it's not until you typically become like a sergeant or a staff NCO where you finally realize why you had to learn these ditties when you were in boot camp, why they had you do so many seemingly arbitrary things that then were the fundamental building blocks that would allow you to achieve the seemingly impossible later.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I took the path of entrepreneurship, and what I found amazing yet interesting and really captured my attention was how could I truly use the things that I learned in the military to excel in business.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I dove into it, the more I was like, holy crap, the military really is the biggest organization on the planet. It's the biggest, company on the planet, but it has the most significant job of any business in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you build a company that is designed for rollover? Like every 4 years, you're going to have to change out all the employees,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah, I never thought about it like that, man.
Every single person that comes to a unit is going to move in 3 years, right? And the majority of your employees coming in are only going to have a 4-year life expectancy, right? And I'm not talking about life or death. I'm talking about like in the business.
Right.
So I started trying to figure out, like, how did they design that to make it appealing for people to come in for 4 years and then leave? And then how could you also have a systematic plan for the people that stay long term?
Mm-hmm.
And how could you systematically build something in that is different than what the civilian world does? I want you to think about this. So my uncle worked for a company, a massive company, for 19 years and was laid off when retirement was at 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
He went to another company and worked another 20 years, but a year after he started getting his retirement check, it used to be 20 years you get retirement, that company went bankrupt and he still didn't get anything. So he retired twice and still did not have a pension.
Wow.
And that used to be like the old school way. Like back
Mm-hmm.
in the 70s and 80s and 90s, people used to say it all the time: get a job that you can retire from. And I was like, well, daggone, the military has this figured out for both types of people. Whether they're
Mm-hmm.
going to be in for 4 years or 8 years or 20 years or 30 years, it doesn't matter. They got a plan for each one of them. And the number one thing that I figured out that the military has that other companies just don't have
What is
is
that?
a rank structure with a known way to get promoted.
Yep.
Tons and tons and tons of people leave regular civilian jobs because they don't know how to get promoted. They don't know what they need to do to get to the next step. So I started looking at this, and I started going to like really big companies and talking to some of the people that had been there, a year or 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. And the ones that were staying the longest were the people that were saying, they told me I need to do X, Y, and Z, and I would get a management position. And then they told me I need to do X, Y, and Z, and I would get a vice president position. And they told me I had to do X, Y, and Z, and I would get, head of the department or something. Those companies that figured that little thing out were keeping people way, way longer. Mm-hmm. Whereas the other companies that didn't have a laid out plan. And then that's when it hit me. I was like, there's literally nothing that you do in a civilian business that you can't directly relate back to your military experience. Right? So I'll give you an example of that. So if I look at a veteran entrepreneur, and let's say they have a good business and it's working, and maybe it's on Facebook, or it's Amazon channel, or maybe it's even brick and mortar. Most of the time, if you look at them and you say, hey, I need you to come up with a marketing plan, they'll look at you like your forehead's untied and they have no idea where to even start. Mm-hmm. But every single one of us that has gotten out of the military, regardless of your rank, you have heard a patrol order. You have heard about 5-paragraph orders, right? You may not have actually written one if you got out as a corporal or below, but at some point you had heard them. You probably were taught in, second phase of boot camp, you were taught about them, right? And then you were also taught probably MCT or SOI. And then you probably heard it again around, your first troop movement in the woods or in the desert, wherever you were, right? So you're at least familiar with them. So I bet you could take any veteran on the planet that was in for, at least one tour. If you took any one of them and said, hey, look, here's a 10-digit grid somewhere out in the middle of the desert, and you have, tanks and fast movers and mortars and infantry, and I want you to come up with a plan to take over this 10-digit grid. Man, they would come up with all kinds of stuff. They would know exactly what to do. They'd probably come back with 2 or 3 plans and 2 or 3 options in case stuff went sideways.
That's good. That's good.
Now you say, I want you to make a 5-paragraph order or a patrol plan in this order, but instead of having tanks and fast movers and mortars and infantry, now you have Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and a website. And they're like, oh, I get it. It's CAX. It's a combined arms attack. I'm just trying to attack. But instead of attacking a 10-digit grid, you're attacking the marketplace to get market share. And the more you can attack the market space and the more market share you pick up, the bigger your business grows.
Right.
Well, now, guess what else you need to do? You need to do rear area security. So we need to work on the systems and processes to make that thing actually work. And then you also need supply, and you also need comms, and you also need all these other things. And all I did was I started basically teaching them how to run a company like you would teach anybody in the military to run a company of troops, right?
Yeah.
And then when they start graduating, all you do is you start adding on, okay, now we're no longer company size, now we're battalion size. So that means we need all these other assets. Oh, now we're regiment size, now we need all these. Now we're a division size, now we need all these. And then you can actually, this is the best part, you can expand into another company or another line by setting up a task force. And if the task force is big enough, you could turn it into an RCT, right? Because everybody understands how those things manipulate because they've been part of them. They've seen how that stuff works in real life. And you just equate it to the business that they're actually in, even though that business has nothing to do with the military. And I just love seeing guys' eyes light up and going, holy crap, I really do know how to do all this stuff. And, it does take some, you know, you do have to learn some technicalities of some other things. When I was in the military, I wasn't even allowed to have Facebook. Like I skipped, this is funny, and I'm completely dating myself, but that's okay. I skipped the whole MySpace thing. Like I didn't even really understand what MySpace even was because I was never allowed to have it.
Yeah.
So, you know, you, you kind of look back and you go, man, not only did I have to learn Facebook, but I had to learn the technical aspects of it when like my 14-year-old now thinks that that Facebook has always been here,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It's crazy how times change. And I love that. I love that because what I hear in that is like what you guys are doing with Mobius, for example. You guys are providing, assets like YouTube, Facebook, all these other facets that hit different, let's just face it, different countries. If we say we were invading a new a new country, you say it's Iraq because they're not getting their shit together and we're invading Iraq, right? Um, that's a market share that you would hit inside of Facebook that you necessarily wouldn't be able to have access to if you didn't have assets and stuff like that. And I think whenever you create it that way, even for myself, when you were explaining this, I was like, oh, task force. Oh, once you get to battalion level, you just focus on this kind of stuff. It's like a different context, man. It kind of almost motivates me more so than, like we were talking before we went on air, me learning, GovCon contracts and stuff like that, big $10 words like procurement and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't understand that shit. And I get intimidated. But
Yeah.
like when you're talking about, just creating task forces, manipulating assets, and as far as YouTube, Facebook, stuff like that, it really does make sense. Now, do you provide or do you see value in like after action reviews and stuff
Yeah,
like
we do it
that? I
all.
mean, that's that's important too.
Yeah,
Like,
we do AARs all the time. And not only do we do them for, promotions and um, you know, sometimes we'll do like big ad strategies where we'll have 10, 12, 15 videos predetermined on how we're going to use them, and we'll AAR the launches on those. But it goes even deeper than that because a lot of guys get out of the military, they don't know what they're going to do, so they basically come out in one of four ways, right? So you have the guys that want to go work for somebody else. You have the guys that want to take over a family business, which until I started doing real research, I had no idea how many veterans get out because they're taking over a family business, grandpas, moms, dads, whatever, because their parents are getting older and stuff like that. Which provides its own unique challenges because now they're dealing with family and they just came out of being in a military setting. So that doesn't go over very well. Then you have the guys that want to be entrepreneurs. And then the fourth type is the undecided. And you kind of got to help them because everybody kind of has that moment where they're like, am I going to use my GI Bill or am I going to go get a job? So everybody kind of has that moment. So we even do this at the rudimentary level of you come out, you don't know what you want to do. You're thinking about starting a business. Okay, BAMSIS, let's begin the planning, right? And we'll let's make reconnaissance, arrange reconnaissance, all that kind of stuff. Let's do all that kind of stuff.
right.
And what we're doing when we're doing like reconnaissance, we're actually going out and checking out the market, seeing what keywords are out there, seeing what products are out there, seeing where sourcing is like, what is shipping cost going to be, like all that kind of stuff. We do that before we ever let them launch a business if they're in the undecided field, right? Or they say, hey, I got this idea. Well, great. Let's see if your idea actually holds weight. Let's see if we can actually make a profitable business before you spend the last couple nickels that you have. Because let's face it, if you come out of the military in 4 years, this is the sad but realistic truth. Most people have only gotten to E4, depending on what branch they came out of. So they're E4 level. E4s don't get paid very much. They typically went in between the ages of 18 and 21, which means that they partied a lot. They've probably got a new vehicle, and all the money that they were making, they have very little left. Now they get out, they don't have a plan, and they're trying to come up with what they're going to do next. And every single one of them have told all the people at their unit that said, hey, do you have a plan? Do you know what you're going to do? Some staff sergeant, some warrant officer, some first sergeant has come up and said, hey, do you know what you're going to be doing? Oh, yes, first sergeant, I've got it. I know exactly what I'm going to be doing. Very, very few of the people that, even if they knew what they were going to do, actually do what they thought they were going to do when they were in their last, 30 days of terminal leave.
So true.
Right?
Yep.
So here's the cold, hard truth of it, and why, a lot of these guys really do listen to what I have to say, is because I don't sugarcoat anything. I give it to them straight. This is a long, hard road. If you truly want to let your brain relax, go work for somebody else. Get yourself a bridge job, start saving money so you have something to actually start a business. Too many entrepreneurs these days believe that they can bootstrap everything together, but they don't understand what the core reason that they don't understand how bootstrapping became, a thing, and they use the word inaccurately. So think about this. Massive $100 million companies bootstrap projects, right? So what they'll do is, let's say, I don't know, Sony and Google and LG, they all get together and they say, hey, we want to create this thing that's a curved screen. True story. They want to create this thing that's a curved screen, but they don't want to put all the money in to do the research on whether this thing's going to work or not. So they each put in $1.5 million so that they can come up with the $4.5 million that they need to do testing and R&D. They are bootstrapping, because $1.5 million for those companies is like a rounding error, but they still have $4.5 million to test this thing out. To them, that's bootstrapping. The way I hear young guys talking about it today, guys and girls, is I'm bootstrapping. Okay, great. What's your budget? Well, I don't really have one. Then you're not bootstrapping, right? Like, you have to have some money to make money. You can't have zero money and make money. And I don't even care if you're making, a bracelet that costs you 10 cents to make. You still have to come up with that 10 cents. And if you want to put it on a Shopify store, you have to have at least $49 a month. And if you want a unique domain, you have to have $10. And if you want, there is money that goes into this stuff.
Right.
You cannot start with zero. If you can't afford to eat right now, don't become an entrepreneur. Just don't do it. Go get yourself a job, and you're going to have two jobs. You're going to have two full-time jobs. So the vast majority of people work from 7 to 3 or 9 to 5. So you're going to go to work in the morning at some other place, and you're going to get money in, and you're going to save as much of that money as you possibly can. And when you're done at that job, you're going to go to your second job, which is building the business that you want to morph into. And you're going to use that first job to pay for everything that second business needs, so that you can actually get it up off the ground. You can actually have money to run Facebook like campaigns and Facebook, ads, and maybe you even do some YouTube ads, and you spend money on a developer to give you a good website that can actually get people's attention and listen to what you have to sell, and then move your product, which, oh, by the way, now you need pick, pack, and ship. So you got to pay somebody else to do all that kind of stuff. And if you're not looking at it like that, you are literally going in with it's like deploying a highly trained infantryman onto the battlefield with nothing on, right? Because although he has the knowledge, he doesn't have any way. Like, you can have the knowledge of AT4, but if you don't have an AT4, you can't shoot it. If you don't have M4 or M9, you can't shoot it. You can't actually actively participate. Right. And that's what you're doing. You're going in so handicapped, you just can't get it off the ground. So then what happens is, in my opinion, and I think we need to be careful of this, especially in the veteran community, is I fully, firmly believe that the reason that there is so much depression in our space is because people leave the military with the best intentions. But the military does a lot, they do a really good job teaching us a lot of stuff, but they don't teach us how to be good civilians. They don't teach us how to be good business owners, right? They don't teach us how to be good employees. So what happens is you come out with the best intentions, you have your head held high, you're walking, tall, but you meet this brand new world where there's not a staff NCO to go to. There's not a TM on the wall. There's not, some corporal that you can go up and say, hey, how do I do this? There's not somebody there to show you the ELOs and TLOs, and there's nobody there to show you how to set up a good wall locker. There's nobody that comes in and inspects before the actual inspection, right? You don't have those things. There's no fire team that's looking at you. There's no fire team leader that's checking you out before the squad leader, before the platoon sergeant, before the company gunny. There's none of that.
Right.
So what happens is you go into this world, you perform at your highest ability, but then there's no buffer between you and the ultimate person that has control whether you have a job or not. Right?
Yeah.
There's no person to help you in those times when you're like, fuck, Staff Sergeant, I don't know what to do next. So I believe that because of that, and because we've ultimately become reliant on our buddy checks, what happens is we go out there, we fail, and some veterans never actually pick up. They never actually figure out how to link up with somebody to get them the knowledge that they need, so they start staying home. And the more they stay home, they start getting trapped into video games. And I know some really great, guys that have attacked that and try to get guys from video games back into the veteran community. But once you get down that road, like depression and then more drinking, and then, the suicide rate is really high. And we all know it. But I think that all basically starts because the greatest intentions kind of go to shit as soon as you go out, as soon as you get out. And then from there, if you're not careful and you don't have a good, group to surround you to help you keep going, like those runs and like those walls that we had in the military. If you don't have that, it's a slippery slope. And I'm telling you, it's not that far down. I mean, even today as a successful business owner, if too many things start going wrong in your life, which as an entrepreneur, it will happen.
Oh yeah.
You have to constantly be diligent and have situational awareness, do all those things, have guardians, have, guardian angels that are looking out. I hire people to be my guardian angels. I've set up a PSD team around me of very knowledgeable people because I watched General Mattis. Every time that dude was in the battle update brief, he had all of his experts standing around so he could intelligently answer every question from every other commander that came. Because if he didn't know the answer, he looks at the comm guy. If he doesn't know the answer, he looks at the supply guy. And they give him the knowledge, and then he speaks it, right? So I surround myself with a really good CFO, a really good attorney, like really good market development people that, really know those areas. And I use them as my PSD team to keep me safe in business. Right.
Yeah.
And that's basically that's generally the concept I use for every single business that I've gotten involved with.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what I love about that is you don't make it mean anything about you for not having the answers. I know that a lot of veterans that listen to this podcast are, a mid-level manager or self-employed, just getting things going. And even for myself, sometimes it hurts whenever I put myself in a situation that I may feel incompetent in. Right. Because I think that us as ambitious vets, when we're getting out of the uniform, we just get in this mindset, man, that we just want to prove something. We want to prove ourselves to the civilian world, because even being a guy that was a Marine vet that did 4 in, 4 out, got out pretty quickly, that 3-year buffer time of like figuring it out, failing in 2 or 3 careers was like me, you're just kind of like, hey, how do I figure this thing out? How do I prove myself and get things rocking and rolling? So I love how, you for yourself, you've learned through this trial and tribulation of building Mobius, being featured on Entrepreneur. That article was amazing. I'm sharing the stage with people like Gary Vaynerchuk and Kevin Harrington and many others. You've just really learned to surround yourself with the right people that can provide answers. And the cool thing about it is there's no pride or ego really there in a bad way. It's kind of just like, yeah, guys, how do we take this mission, map out the reconnaissance and our strategy plan and get it rock and rolling, utilizing all the acronyms that we all know from serving, no matter how long we serve. And I just think that's a brilliant idea. I think it's amazing, brother.
I did it because out of necessity, right? All I was trying to do was, adapt and overcome. That's really all I was trying to do. And the crazy thing is, I say this all the time to people, and only veterans understand this. But let's say we're sitting out in the middle of the desert, and let's say we're all, smoking and joking. We're all sitting on ammo cans, and we're just, eating chow, MREs, whatever. If First Sergeant walked up and said, "Hey, dig a 3-foot hole right there," regardless of whether we had shovels or not, somehow we would have a 3-foot hole there by the time he came back. Right. Yeah. And that doesn't matter. I mean, it could be, there's no e-tools around. There's no shovels around. It could be ammo can lids. It could be fingers. It could be K-bars. It could be pocket knives. Like, it could be whatever, but we would figure out a way to get that hole there. And what happens is the thing that we would do first is we would all look at each other and go, is he serious? Right.
Yeah.
And somebody with some brains is going to say, yep, he's serious. So what are we going to do? Right. And then you just start lobbing ideas at how to get that done. And we're going to try a couple different things. And then we're going to find one thing that actually works. And we're all going to work together to get that hole dug. And if anybody's standing on the sidelines, arms crossed, not participating, somebody's going to say, hey, get back in the game. Stop being a douchebag. Right.
Yep.
It's the same exact thing in business. You have to try different things over and over and over. The difference is you have to be first sergeant 1 minute, and then you actually have to be the team lead the second minute. So as long as you can take your pride away long enough to say open-mindedly, I don't know how to do this. I need to go find an expert. If you can do that, then you do it exactly like you would in the military when they sent you to some school so that you could learn how to do it and bring it back to the unit. And then you get to do hip pocket classes on that thing for the next 3 years, right? Like you're the expert. I remember they sent me to a hazmat class one time. And from then on, I was like the hazmat expert. I was sat in a 6-hour class. Like I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was the company hazmat expert. It's the same exact thing. That's what you have to do. As a business owner, you have to be able to go get the knowledge, bring it back, share it with your team. If that doesn't work, go get an expert, bring them in, have them teach, right? So that you can learn these things and only have pride in the fact that you were ballsy enough to go ask for help because it's not built in like it used to be.
Yep.
Right? If you can just ask for help and get yourself to understand that it's okay not to know all the answers because you're in a new battle space. You have a new target. You have new ammunition. You have everything is new. It's all the same. You have past experience doing it, but you just have these little nuances, these little tricky things, just like if you were in the military, they brought you a brand new radio you'd never seen before. Right. Bring the comm guy in to show you how to use it because your life depends on it. Now you're going to bring an expert to teach you how to do something because your livelihood depends on it. And when you can make that correlation, man, it's powerful. It gives you the motivation to not give up and to keep moving forward. Even if you're falling forward, you could still keep moving forward in your business.
Yeah. And one thing that I hear that you've done a damn good job at, and I think this stems from even where you were raised by your grandfather, from what I've been studying from your other interviews, is that you've done a really damn good job as far as doing active thinking. In other words, one thing that I teach in our I call it our personal accelerator programs over here for ambitious vets to accelerate their emotional intelligence is really how do we think independently, how do we provide frameworks, structures, and stuff like that, like you were talking about, use these acronyms to kind of provide a sense of roadmap or framework to do some independent thinking to leverage our problem solving skills, our decision making, our conflict management, and stuff like that. And it just sounds like you've done a hell of a job, with veterans that, are getting out that want to be entrepreneurs or are doing entrepreneurship but need to scale, providing a great marketing solution to these veterans that are like, hey, I've gotten to this level of my business, but how do I get here? How do I scale it to over $1 million? How do I grow it to $10 million a year? Stuff like that. And you're walking by example, and you're letting them know, hey, ask for help. I'm an expert. I could help, scale your business. Not only that, but help you bring in a hell of a lot more revenue by providing a clear framework, allow assets that are going to help more revenue and stuff like that come into the business. So I love that. Anything else to add to that, Patch?
Yeah, one of the things that I was really, really good at, I got two words for you: green monster. All I did was I would hire people to come in and build something. It doesn't matter what it is. Let's just say a landing page. I hire them to come in and build a landing page. But part of the thing that I asked them to do, and part of the thing that I hired them for, was to build a company checklist of the steps required to do that task.
Mm.
And I'd be over there scribbling in my little green monster, like everything that he was doing, so that I could build the system and the process so that I could scale the business. That way, if the expert left, I could have a brand new guy come in and say, follow this checklist. It's the same exact thing that we did in the military. It's the same. Every single thing that you will ever do in the military has a checklist. It has a TM. It has, all the steps that you need to do in order to manipulate, move, and employ that particular thing, whether it's a truck or it's a weapon or it's, how to distribute chow. There's a class on how to give a class on how to give a class in the military, right? Because you have instructors.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
But somebody had to build the class for that. Right. So I think that if you just keep figuring out over and over and over, just relate back to how did they do it in the military? What do I need to set up? If you can constantly fall back to that, there is a lot more juice in there than you're giving it credit. And you can recall a lot more things that helps you get out of situations when you were in the military and stuff broke.
Yeah.
Right. You can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And be more self-efficient, self-reliant and stuff like that, right? Not just fall back and be like, hey, who can help solve this problem? Who's going to come in? Really be able to fall back on a standard operating system and stuff like that. So, Patch, one thing I want to ask you right now is one thing that we did inside of our audience, and thank you, ambitious vets who participated inside of this, is we have a question from one of our followers. His name is Ben Killoy. He's a Marine veteran. He runs the Military Veteran Dad podcast. His mission is in the podcast is to really bring every dad home psychologically after combat and stuff like that, after they've transitioned and stuff like that. So he's got a great mission. And he said, if I could ask any question to Patch Baker, it would be this. And I'm going to ask you, what is a question people should be asking you, but often don't know to?
Dude, I love this question. This is such a good question. Now, for me, I am a very unique person in the amount of skills that I've been able to collect through multiple different careers now. And it's kind of like when you get somebody that builds a website, right? You typically have like the greatest programmer and the greatest UI guy, how the site looks on the front, and the greatest um, you know conversion specialist, you never find one dude that has all three of those skills.
Mm.
So um, I'm very unique in this, but I absolutely love this question because too many times people are asking me, what is the ROI? Like, that's the biggest question that they have. And it's such an arbitrary guess.
Mm.
Like, there's no way to understand how the market, like, I don't care who you are, whether you're, you know, Cadillac or your Ferrari or your Dunkin' Donuts or your, it doesn't matter who you are. You're never going to be able to tell without testing,
Mm.
right? There's just you have to do market testing. There is no like sundial that you can go to. There's no, like, I'm not some witch doctor. Facebook is not a genie in a bottle that you can just rub 3 times and get what you want. You have to test your product and your messaging against the market. And I don't care how great the marketer is. I don't care how great the VP of sales is. Nobody's going to be able to tell you that.
Mm.
So the question that I rarely get asked, that I should get asked, is actually a two-part question, or two-part. There's 2 questions, but they mean basically the same thing. So the first is, how long do you think the test period will be?
Mm.
And then second is, based off of that, how much money do I need to spend in order to get to the goal I'm trying to hit?
Mm.
Because when you ask for ROI, there's literally nothing they can tell you. So they go to the typical industry standard is, 3-to-1 all day long. 3-to-1. You put $1 in, you're going to get 3 out. But that just is not reasonable. It's not logical, and it's not ethical to tell people.
Mm.
Now, you can have a goal of 3-to-1, but that doesn't mean that you're going to ask somebody and off the top of their head, they're going to be able to pull that out and say, this is what we think.
Right.
You need to test the audience, but most testing can happen in less than 90 days. But the second part is, I ask people all the time, what's the goal? What are we trying to do? At the end of the day, are you trying to build a business to sell it because you're going to build that much differently? Are you building it as a legacy, meaning that it's long-term growth forever and ever and ever? You're going to pass it on to your kids. And if that's the case, great. We're going to build that way differently. Is this just something that you're trying to do? Like, I have several that have topped out. They're going to top out at a certain level, and it's okay. I'm not trying to build them anymore. I'm just going to maintain that level where there's this nice sweet spot. It just kind of idles in that spot and it returns money. But I have 4 or 5 or 6 of those so that I can keep increasing my, personal wealth and my overall company growth. So what if I were to tell you that in order to hit your $10 million exit, you need to spend $1 million? Well, now you got to go figure out how to come up with $1 million. But if you can do that, and I can build a $3 million business, but it's a SaaS business, and I know I can get a 4 to 8 multiplier on that SaaS business, there's your $10 million business. It took me $1 million to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But too many times they want to tip their toes in because they haven't actually gotten enough money together to do what they're ultimately trying to do, which is the same as, I'm ready to go to war, but I don't have quite as many bullets as I think I need. Right? Like, don't put yourself in that spot.
Yeah.
Right? Don't go to war with sim rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you need to actually have the ammunition, the buildup, the force required to legitimately and reasonably start a business with the expectation that I can fail 2 or 3 times, but still have enough money to push this thing to where I want it to go. And I'll tell you, I'll be the first to tell you, I have failed a bunch in business. But for me, the number one thing that you can be as an entrepreneur, the number one skill out there that you can have, and some people will say it's finances. I think that's bullshit. People will say, well, it's good Understanding of people, I think that's bullshit. Communication, I think that's bullshit. Writing skills, I think that's bullshit. The number one thing that you can have that will make you a successful entrepreneur is problem solving skills.
Mm.
If you have problem solving skills, you can get yourself out of any hole that you come in, right? If you have problem solving skills, you're going to be organically good at sales. And if you can get sales, you can dig yourself out of a hole. And I've always had that. Like, I've always been able to, even when things were going sideways, I could sell enough to get me out of the hole, whatever hole I got into. And because I got really, really good, like, I'm super confident in myself, I'm super confident in my team. And because I've always been able to do that, and I've always been able to rely on them, I've always known that if I could sell it, they could pull it off. And because of that, and we haven't let anybody down because of that. I always was able to figure out, even if some account wasn't performing well, or, some product wasn't moving well, or, some shipping problem was making shipments late, so we were having refunds. I've always been able to problem solve my way out of that.
Wow. Yeah, that comes back around to the whole grandfather story of active thinking and stuff like that, and thinking more on your feet, being able to problem solve in the moment and stuff like that. So I love all of that, and that's a great answer, Ben Killoy. Thanks for providing that question, because I got probably a half page of notes just from what he just threw up right there. So I appreciate that. So Patch, if we could sum this all up into 3 golden grenades, man, all this, wisdom and knowledge that you've just given us in the matter of time that we've brought. I know you've been out for over a decade now from the Marine Corps, and just have done so much in your life. And how could you sum everything up in 3 golden grenades to keep an ambitious vet that's listening to this unstuck in their career, a sense of purpose, or life satisfaction? How do they elevate their game, man?
Bro, I'm going to tell you these, and you're going to be like, man, you're just copying the military. But you got to go back to the fundamentals. Whenever you get stuck, go back to the basics. That's number 1. Just go back to the basics. Whenever you get stuck, you have to be able to do the second part, which is compartmentalize information. We all know how to do that, right? So if you were in the military, you were a reservist or active duty, at the end of the day, you had to go home, and you had to maybe even hang out with your wife and family. You had to compartmentalize what happened during the day to what you do at night, right? When you go off to war, you have to compartmentalize what's happening right here and not worry about what's at home, right? There's certain meetings that you were in. If you had a clearance, there were certain meetings that you were in where you got information that you couldn't use it anywhere else. So if you compartmentalize yourself from all the distractions in the business, whether it's bad sales, or maybe it's, you got teammates that aren't, living up to their, what they could be doing, or you're working for somebody else and he doesn't run the business the way that you think he could. Compartmentalize yourself for a moment, get your bearings, and then think about the problems starting at the fundamental basics. There's nothing you can't work yourself through if you just go back to the basics, but it takes you to compartmentalize the information and get yourself out of the weeds. Take the stress away, kumbaya yourself, woosah yourself. Take a moment to just relax and understand the problem. And then the other thing, and lastly, is always position improvement. No matter what you set up, position improvement's the next thing you do, right? So 3 easy steps. It gets me out of just about every single problem that I've ever been in business, or that I'm working on for other people's businesses as a consultant, or as a partner, or as a, as a vendor of services. It's super, super simple. Fundamentals, compartmentalize, and position improvement. You do those things, you can get out of all the problems. You can problem solve your way through just about any big issue, and surround yourself with good people with the PSD team, and you'll be just fine.
Man. Well, Patch Baker, I just acknowledge you for being a Korean eater that got out and figured it out by sticking to the basics, man. How you can transform military philosophy into the civilian world and create the success that you have is inspiring for us all, man. So just thank you for who you are. Thank you for coming on the Ambitious Vet Show.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you having me, man.
You got it. So last thing, how can people come find out more about you, Mobius Media Solutions? Where can they go to find out more about you?
Yeah, you can go to patchbaker.com or you can go to facebook.com/patchbakerusmc and find out all the cool shit that we're doing.
There you have it, Ambitious Vet. Go and check out all the amazing stuff, the companies that they've been able to work with, like Black Rifle Coffee, Brute Force Training, and many, many more. You're going to want to go and check out how to go from where you are to where you want to go by getting your message out there, simply using our military fundamental philosophies. With that being said, Ambitious Vet, hold the vision and trust the process. Take care. Well, there you have it, Ambitious Vet. Episode number 76 with Patch Baker of Mobius Media Solutions. If you haven't already, go subscribe, rate, review the podcast, and also give us a 5-star rating. We have been known to surprise anybody that does that by calling them out on episodes and reading them off. So if you haven't already and you love this show and you get golden grenades every single week, definitely rate the podcast so we can reach more veterans, and maybe, and who knows, someday you may just be able to connect with more veterans just like you. Lastly, if you're listening to this right now, we already know you're warrior made, but to become passion driven, just utilize this one golden grenade you just heard from Patch Baker today, and I promise you, it may take 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, hell, it might take 2 years. It doesn't matter. I promise you, consistency always pays off. You will be living a more passion and purpose driven life. Until next time, Ambitious Vet, let's go get it.